She was rejected by her fated mate at 16 for being defective, but the moon goddess revealed she is. The sun had barely set when the kingdom of Urindor fell into its usual twilight. The sky bled purple and silver, the horizon lit by the last traces of day. In the heart of the palace, the young nobles gathered for the rite of bonding, a ceremony older than memory, where fated mates were revealed under the first full moon of the season. Leora stood at the edge of the marble hall, her hands trembling. Her heart pounded like a drum in her chest. She had spent 16 years waiting for this moment. Every whispered story about fates and bonds had built her hope into something fragile yet brilliant. Her hair, dark as midnight, flowed over her shoulders, and her eyes, a rare shade of silver, reflected the pale moonlight spilling through the stained glass windows. She was ready, or at least she thought she was. The air grew colder as the court hushed, and from the grand balcony Prince Kaelin descended. The son of King Aelric and Queen Seraphine, Kaelin was tall and strong, his presence commanding and undeniable. Leora's chest tightened at the sight of him. He had been her friend once before the fates had spoken, before whispers of destiny had circled like vultures. The high priestess stepped forward, holding the sacred moon chalice, its silver surface glowing softly. "The fated pair shall be revealed," she intoned. Her voice carried through the hall a mix of authority and ritual cadence. The first name she spoke was Leora's. Her heart leaped, then stilled. Every pair of eyes in the room turned toward her. Every breath seemed to hang in the air. And then Kaelin's name followed hers. A thrill ran through Leora, her fated mate, the one she had dreamt of for years, the one whose name she had whispered to the stars in her darkest nights. Kaelin's eyes met hers, and then slowly he shook his head. "Leora," he said, his voice steady, calm, cruel in its precision. "You are defective. The bond cannot hold. I cannot be bound to you." The hall gasped. Whispers erupted like wildfire. Some covered their mouths in shock, others stared, mouths open. Leora felt the world tilt beneath her feet. She tried to speak, but no words came. "Defective," he repeated, louder this time, as though the echo of the word could erase what he had once promised. Tears filled her eyes. Her throat ached, but still she could not speak. She wanted to scream, to run, to collapse. Instead, she stood frozen, her heart shattering in silence. Kaelin turned and walked away, his cape brushing the marble floor, leaving her alone before the court. The whispers swelled around her like a storm. Leora heard words she had never imagined being spoken. Flawed. Worthless, cursed. Her mother rushed to her side, pressing a trembling hand to her shoulder. "Leora," she whispered, but Leora could not hear her. She could not hear anything but the echo of Kaelin's voice and the word defective repeating in her mind like a curse. That night she ran. She ran through the palace corridors, past guards and servants who stared in confusion, past the glittering chandeliers and tapestries that now seemed to mock her. She slipped out into the moonlit gardens, the cold wind whipping her hair across her face. The moon hung low and full, bathing the world in silver light. Leora sank to her knees beside the marble fountain, its water reflecting her tear-streaked face. "Why?" she whispered to the night. "Why am I defective?" For long minutes, silence answered her. The wind stirred the trees, carrying with it the faint scent of jasmine and pine. Then a soft glow appeared over the fountain. Leora lifted her head and gasped. A figure hovered above the water, bathed in radiant light, her form impossible yet serene. The moon goddess, the deity whispered of in lullabies and prayers, said to watch over the fates of mortals, stood before her. "You are not defective, child," the goddess said, her voice like wind chimes through the night. "You are chosen. The flaw that others see is the gift that the world needs." Leora's lips trembled. "But Kaelin, he does not understand," the goddess replied. "And in time he may. But first you must learn who you are. The power within you is not for the weak. It is for those brave enough to embrace it." The light of the goddess enveloped Leora, warm and gentle, seeping into her chest, into her bones. She felt something awaken inside her, a soft pulse that grew stronger with every heartbeat. She realized she could hear it, the whisper of spirits among the trees, the flutter of destiny along the breeze. Shadows shifted, revealing glimpses of paths she had never known. I can see them, Leora whispered, awe and fear mingling in her voice. The threads, the futures. The goddess smiled, a light touching her features like moonlight on water. Yes, Leora, you were born under the eclipse marked by the silver moon. Your vision, your gift, it is rare, feared, and misunderstood, but it is yours, and soon it will be tested. The goddess's glow began to fade, leaving Leora in the moonlight alone. Yet the garden no longer felt empty. The trees whispered encouragement, the fountain sparkled as if alive. She lifted her head, feeling a spark of strength she had never known. But even as she felt this new power, a shadow touched her heart. Kalen. His face haunted her memory, the pride, the certainty, the cruelty in his eyes, and yet beneath it a flicker of something unspoken lingered. She could feel it. He was in danger. Somewhere his life teetered on the edge of peril, and though he had rejected her, she could not let him fall. The wind whispered through the branches, carrying a message she could not ignore. The moon goddess had not left her merely with gifts, she had left her with a choice. A choice between despair and courage, between running from the world or facing the darkness that would come. Leora rose, the silver light of the moon painting her face. She would not stay broken, not entirely. She would learn, she would grow. And she would find a way to face Kalen, to understand him, and perhaps, one day show him the truth of her strength. The moon shimmered above, almost as if it nodded in approval. Leora clenched her fists and whispered into the wind, I am not defective, I will prove it. And I will not be afraid. From the palace walls behind her, torches flickered, their flames trembling as if sensing the change in her. Somewhere in the distant corridors, Kaelin's presence lingered, though she could not yet see him. The threads of destiny had begun to weave, drawing them inexorably together, but in ways neither of them could yet understand. The night deepened, carrying with it a mixture of sorrow, longing, and promise. And in the quiet, the first step of Leora's journey began, into power, into discovery, and into the shadows where fate waited patiently, its fingers reaching for her. The moon had faded into dawn, leaving a pale gray light across the kingdom of Urindor. Leora returned to her small chamber in the palace, her mind buzzing with the glow of the moon goddess's revelation. She had felt a new power awaken inside her, a strange warmth that pulsed in her chest and fingers. Yet with it came fear. What if she could not control it? What if it hurt those she cared about? She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her reflection in the polished silver mirror. Her hair fell around her shoulders like a shadow, and her silver eyes seemed to shimmer with a faint light that no one had noticed before. She traced a finger along the line of her jaw as if searching for the part of herself Kalen had called defective. But that word had no hold here. Not now. Leora took a deep breath. She had a choice. She could hide, retreat into the quiet corners of the palace, and let the court whisper their cruel words. Or she could embrace the gift the moon goddess had given her and face the world, stronger than she had ever been. She chose the latter. The first test came sooner than she expected. It was 2 nights later, under a silvered moon, when whispers of trouble reached the palace. Guards reported sightings of shadowy figures near the forest edge, beyond the castle walls. Some claimed they were spirits, others said dark creatures sent by enemies of the kingdom. No one knew for sure. Leora felt the stirrings of her power, a pull toward the unknown. Her heart ached with a mixture of fear and longing. And somewhere deep inside, a small voice told her Kaelin was somehow connected to this danger. Ignoring the doubts that rose like cold mist, she dressed in a simple tunic, pulled her cloak tight, and slipped out into the night. The corridors of the palace were quiet, the torches casting flickering shadows on stone walls. No one saw her leave, though she knew that her absence would be noticed eventually. That did not matter. The moon guided her through the gardens and toward the forest, its silver glow reflecting in her eyes. She could hear the whispers again, soft at first, like leaves rustling, and then louder, like voices carried on the wind. Spirits, the goddess had said. And she could feel them, trailing along the edges of the trees, brushing against her skin, warning her. The forest was alive with movement. Shadows shifted unnaturally, and the trees seemed to lean closer, their branches twisting like fingers. Leora's heart raced, but she forced herself to step forward. She whispered the name of the moon goddess, silently asking for guidance. Then she saw him. Kalen. He was trapped in a circle of dark light, his sword clutched tightly in his hands. His face was pale, drawn with strain, and his eyes widened when he saw her approach. But there was something different, something heavier than fear, something he did not fully understand. "Leora," he whispered, his voice barely audible. What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same," she said, her voice steady even though her heart leaped in her chest. "But I think I know why you're here. You're in danger." Kalen's eyes flickered with surprise, then relief. I thought," he stopped, swallowing hard. "I thought you would never." "Never what?" Leora asked, stepping closer, feeling the moonlight pool around her like a cloak. "Save you, protect you." Kalen hesitated, then looked away. You're different now, I can feel it." "I am," she said, "and you should know the one you called Defective is. I have power you cannot imagine, and I can help you, but only if you trust me." The shadows around them writhed, dark tendrils reaching for Kalen. Leora raised her hand, and a silver light blossomed from her palm, illuminating the clearing. The shadows hissed and recoiled, but they did not disappear. Kalen stared, awe and fear mingling in his gaze. "How?" "The moon goddess," Leora said. "She gave me this, and now I will use it to save you." She stepped forward, weaving threads of silver light around the dark shapes. The shadows twisted, struggling against her control, but her power flowed stronger than she had expected. She felt it in her bones, in her very soul. The moon goddess's words echoed in her mind. "The flaw that others see is the gift that the world needs." With a final surge, the shadows shattered into dust, dissipating into the night air. Kalen fell to his knees, breathing heavily, as if awakening from a nightmare. Leora approached cautiously, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You're alive," she whispered. I don't know how," he said, his voice trembling. He looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in years. "I was wrong about you. I never knew." Leora felt a strange mixture of anger and relief. His eyes held guilt, but also something else. Something unspoken, buried beneath his pride. She pulled her hand back, leaving a small distance between them. "You will know soon enough," she said softly. "But right now we must go. The danger isn't gone. The shadows only retreat when we are apart from the palace." They moved through the forest together, Kalen trailing behind her. He was silent at first, unsure what to say. Leora could feel his tension, his pride warring with his gratitude. And though she did not speak of it, she felt it too, the pull between them, tangled with old wounds and new understanding. Eventually, they reached a clearing where the first rays of dawn began to touch the treetops. Kalen stopped and turned to her, his eyes searching. "Leora," he began. Then he hesitated, the words catching in his throat. I don't understand why." "You will," she said. "Everything will be clear in time, but there is more. I can see threads of danger, threads that reach into the palace itself. Someone is trying to harm you, Kalen, and maybe more than you alone can face." Kalen's jaw tightened. He looked away, silent, his pride and fear warring within him. Finally, he said, "Then I will follow you. I trust you in this. But don't mistake this for anything else. I am still learning who you are." Leora felt the weight of his words, a mixture of relief and lingering sorrow. He still carried the old pain, the memory of calling her defective. Yet now there was a spark of something new, awareness, humility, and perhaps respect. The days that followed were a mixture of training and secrecy. Leora discovered that her power could reach beyond the forest. She could feel the threads of destiny, glimpse shadows before they appeared, and even sense the emotions of others. But every gift came with a cost. Every use of her power left her drained, her body trembling with fatigue. Kalen began to spend time with her in secret, at first reluctantly. He observed her, silently noting the changes in her demeanor and strength. He practiced swordplay near her, testing himself, and she practiced her magic, often sending threads of silver light to guide him or shield him. And slowly, as the days passed, their interactions became something more than necessity. Moments of quiet understanding, of shared glances, of unspoken concern, began to weave between them. Leora still remembered his words from the rite of bonding, but the anger that had burned in her chest began to cool. It did not disappear, it could not, but it transformed into something sharper, something that would not let her be dismissed again. Kalen, too, struggled with the change inside himself. He had once called her defective, but now he saw her strength, her wisdom, and the courage that shone even brighter than her power. He did not know what to call these feelings, but they unsettled him. Every time he met her gaze, he felt something stirring, something he had not expected. One night, under a crescent moon, they sat together on a hill overlooking the kingdom. Leora's hands glowed faintly with silver light as she traced the threads of the world, showing Kalen glimpses of futures that could come to pass. "Do you see?" she asked softly. "The paths we walk are not fixed. They shift depending on what we choose, what we fight for." Kalen watched, silent, captivated. You were never defective, not in any way, and yet I fear I may have caused you more harm than I can ever undo. "You cannot change the past," Leora said, her voice steady, "but we can shape what comes next, together." He looked at her, really looked, and for a moment the walls he had built around his heart cracked. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face, and she did not flinch. It was a small gesture, but in it was trust, recognition, and the first thread of something neither had dared name. Emotional cliffhanger for part 2. As the moon dipped below the horizon, a distant howl echoed through the forest. Leora's silver eyes narrowed and she felt the threads of fate twist sharply. Danger was coming, closer, stronger, and darker than before. Kalen rose, gripping his sword, his voice tense. "What is it?" "I don't know yet," Leora admitted, her hand glowing brighter. "But whoever, or whatever, it is, they are coming for us both, and we will not survive unless we face it together." In the distance, shadows moved, larger and more deliberate than the fleeting ones from before. The darkness was coming, and the first true test of their bond, power, and trust had begun. The moon had risen high over Erendor, casting a silver glow across the kingdom's walls. The night air was thick with whispers of unease, the trees along the forest's edge trembling as though aware of a dark presence drawing near. Leora's heart pounded as she stood on the hill overlooking the valley, the threads of fate shimmering faintly around her like strands of silver mist. Beside her, Kalen gripped his sword, his eyes scanning the shadows that seemed to stretch and twist unnaturally. He had been uneasy all evening, sensing something beyond his training, beyond his experience. And now, with Leora by his side, he realized he was not prepared for what was coming. "You feel it too, don't you?" Leora asked softly. Her voice carried a calm authority she had not possessed before, one that came from the moon goddess's guidance and the growing power within her. Kalen nodded, his jaw tight. "I do. It's different from before, stronger, intelligent. It's not just shadows, it's a force." Leora's silver eyes narrowed. She reached out with her senses, feeling the threads of danger twist and knot. She could see the paths of the creatures moving through the forest, their forms darker than any shadow, their intent malevolent and precise. "They're coming for us," she said. "And they're not alone, something or someone is guiding them." Kalen frowned. "Guiding them, who could?" Before he could finish, a sudden chill swept through the clearing. The air seemed to thicken, pressing against their skin, and the shadows along the tree line shifted, forming into shapes that moved with a purposeful intelligence. Leora's hand glowed with silver light, the threads around her tightening like a net. "They're testing us," she whispered. "They want to see what we're capable of. They want to break us before the real danger arrives." Kalen's grip on his sword tightened. "Then we won't give them the satisfaction." The first wave came silently. Figures emerged from the darkness, humanoid but twisted, their eyes glowing faint red. Leora's power flared, silver threads wrapping around the intruders, holding them at bay. Shadows recoiled and hissed, but there were too many, and some slipped past her barriers, attacking Kalen with unnatural speed. He fought fiercely, his sword cutting through the first of the shadows, but each strike seemed to summon another. Leora moved beside him, weaving light and threads to shield him and strike back. For the first time, they worked together seamlessly, their movements synchronized in a dance of power and survival. And yet, even as they fought, Kalen could not ignore the change in her. The Leora who had been gentle, shy, and uncertain was now radiant with power, confident, almost untouchable. He felt a strange mixture of awe, fear, and longing. "You've changed," he said, as a shadow lunged, and she twisted it into silver strands that dissolved into the night. "I told you," Leora replied, her voice calm and steady. "I am not defective. I am stronger than you ever imagined." Kalen did not answer. He could not. His chest ached and his pride warred with a growing admiration and a feeling he could not name. The battle continued for what felt like hours. Leora could feel her energy waning, her magic drawing deeply from her essence. The shadows were relentless, and she realized with a pang of fear that this was only a test. The real danger, she sensed, had yet to arrive. Finally, as the first light of dawn began to touch the horizon, the shadows retreated, dissolving into the mist as if they had never been. Leora collapsed to her knees, exhausted, her silver threads flickering weakly around her. Kalen knelt beside her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "You did it," he said quietly. "You saved us both." Leora shook her head. "No, this was only the beginning. Something darker is coming. I can feel it in the threads. We are not safe yet." Kalen looked at her, truly looked at her, and the words he had never spoken for fear of pride and shame escaped his lips. I was wrong about you. All those years I didn't see. You are extraordinary." Leora's eyes met his, and for a brief moment the world seemed to hold its breath. Anger, pain, and longing swirled between them, tangled and unresolved. She wanted to speak, to tell him that his words did not erase the hurt, but that she had grown stronger because of it. But before she could, the ground beneath them trembled. A deep, rumbling voice echoed through the forest, one that seemed older than time itself. "So she awakens." The shadows stirred again, but this time they were not alone. A figure emerged, taller than any man, cloaked in darkness that seemed to drink the light around it. Its eyes glowed with an eerie green fire, and every step it took made the air tremble. Kalen stood, sword raised, but even he faltered in the presence of this being. Leora's silver threads quivered with recognition. She had seen this figure in glimpses of the threads of fate, a force of pure malice, bound to nothing but destruction. "Who are you?" Kalen demanded, his voice steady despite the fear rising in his chest. The figure laughed, a sound that rattled the trees. "I am what waits for those who defy destiny, and you have defied it, little princess." Leora felt the threads of her power tighten around her, responding to the threat. She could sense the danger not only to herself but to Kalen, to the kingdom, to everything she held dear. And yet, she also felt a strange pull, a connection to this being, as if their fates were entwined in a dark dance she had only begun to understand. "You will not harm him," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I am not afraid." The figure tilted its head, intrigued. "Ah, fearless are we! How amusing! Very well, let us see if your silver threads can bind me." The battle that followed was unlike any Leora had experienced. This was no mere shadow to weave apart. This was a being of ancient darkness, twisting the threads of fate itself. Leora's silver light clashed with the green fire of the entity, the energy of the forest trembling under their power. Kalen fought beside her, every strike of his sword precise, protective, and desperate. He realized with growing awe that Leora's strength did not only protect him, it inspired him, pushed him to fight harder to match the intensity of the enemy. As the fight continued, Leora felt herself pushed to her limits. Her arms ached, her mind spun with the strain of controlling the threads of fate. And yet, with every step, every strike, every flicker of silver light, she felt herself growing, not just stronger but wiser. She began to anticipate the movements of their enemy, to weave not just defense but strategy into her magic. Kalen noticed it too. Her silver eyes glowed brighter than ever, and her movements were precise, graceful, and deadly. He felt the old barriers in his heart crumble, replaced by a new kind of respect and awe, and a stirring of something far deeper. Finally, with a surge of will, Leora channeled all her strength into a single, brilliant thread of silver light. It wrapped around the dark figure like a binding, piercing the green fire that surrounded it. The being let out a scream that shook the forest, then vanished in a burst of smoke and shadow. Leora fell to her knees, breathing heavily, her energy spent. Kalen knelt beside her, supporting her as she trembled from exhaustion. "You saved us," he said, his voice trembling. You are incredible." Leora looked up at him, her silver eyes glowing faintly. "We saved each other," she said softly. "But this was only a glimpse of what's to come. The darkness is stronger than this, and it will return." Kalen nodded, his fingers brushing against hers, a connection neither of them had dared acknowledge before. "Then we will face it together," he said quietly. For a moment, silence fell over them, broken only by the rustling of the trees. They sat side by side, their hearts heavy with exhaustion and relief, yet strangely light with the bond that had begun to grow between them. And in that quiet, the threads of destiny twisted around them, stronger than ever. Leora could feel it, the dance of fates, the intertwining of power, love, and destiny. She realized, with a mixture of fear and hope, that she and Kalen were now part of something far greater than themselves. The sky above Erendor was a canvas of blood red and silver, the moon hanging low, full and luminous. The kingdom lay in uneasy quiet, the villagers shuddered in their homes, and the guards tense along the walls. The air carried a metallic tang of impending battle, and every shadow seemed to twist with malevolent intent. Leora stood atop the palace balcony, her silver eyes reflecting the glow of the moon. Beside her, Kalen adjusted his armor, gripping his sword tightly. They had spent days preparing, training in secret, honing Leora's power and Kalen's skill. And now the final confrontation had come. She felt the threads of destiny vibrating around her, tighter than ever, weaving a path toward the enemy. The dark force that had watched them in the forest had returned, older, stronger, and more cunning. It had gathered creatures of shadow and malice, bending them to its will, and it hungered not only for the kingdom but for Kalen and her, the two hearts entwined by fate. "This is it," Kalen said, his voice steady but low. "We face it together." Leora nodded, feeling the moon goddess's presence like a whisper against her soul. "Your strength is yours, child. Your courage will guide the world." Together, they descended to the courtyard, where the first waves of shadow creatures waited. They moved with a precision that spoke of intelligence and dark strategy. Leora raised her hands, silver threads unfurling in the air, forming a luminous shield that shimmered across the courtyard. Kalen charged forward, sword gleaming, cutting through the creatures that slipped past Leora's barriers. She followed, her magic flowing like water, weaving threads that bound and shattered the shadows. Their movements were a dance of light and darkness, strength and strategy, each anticipating the other's actions without a word. The battle raged for hours, the night alive with flashes of silver light, the clang of steel, and the shrieks of shadowed foes. Leora's power burned like a fire in her veins, exhausting yet exhilarating. She realized with a sharp pang that this was not only a test of skill but of will, heart, and unity. She and Kaelin were not merely fighting together. They were connected in something deeper, something the enemy could not sever. But even as the last of the minor shadows fell, the true enemy emerged from the darkness. It was the same ancient figure Leora had glimpsed in the forest, but now its power was fully revealed. Its eyes glowed with green fire, its form immense and terrifying. Around it, shadows twisted like serpents, alive and hungry. It moved with a slow, deliberate grace, its gaze fixed on Leora and Kaelin. "So, you have grown," the creature hissed, its voice like stone grinding over metal. "But growth alone will not save you." Leora squared her shoulders. "We are not afraid of you," she said. Her voice was steady, though her heart thudded in her chest. "Whatever you are, we will face you together." Kaelin's hand brushed hers, a brief, grounding touch. She felt the spark of connection, the bond of trust and shared destiny. It strengthened her resolve, a reminder that she was not alone, that they had already survived impossible odds by standing together. The ancient enemy moved first, unleashing waves of dark energy that surged like a storm across the courtyard. Leora raised her hands, sending silver threads into the air. The threads tangled with the dark energy, clashing and sparking, illuminating the courtyard in a dazzling display of power. Kaelin fought beside her, every swing of his sword slicing through shadows, protecting Leora from those that slipped past her magic. His eyes, usually so guarded, held only focus, and a flicker of something more: admiration, awe, and something he did not yet name. Leora's energy surged, stronger than ever. She could feel the threads of fate responding to her will, weaving a web of silver light around the enemy. Every attack, every strike, every movement required her full concentration, and yet she felt a growing confidence. The moon goddess had been right. The flaw the world had seen in her was not a weakness, but a source of strength beyond imagining. "You are bound by fate," the enemy hissed, striking with tendrils of darkness that lashed at her. "And yet you resist." "I am not bound by your rules," Leora replied, weaving the threads tighter, wrapping the tendrils and sending them crashing back into the shadows. "I choose my own path." The enemy roared in fury and struck directly at Kaelin. Leora reacted instinctively, throwing herself in front of him, a silver shield wrapping around them both. The energy from the impact knocked her to the ground, leaving her trembling. Kaelin knelt beside her, fear flashing across his face, though he masked it with resolve. "You cannot protect him alone," Kaelin said, his hand brushing hers again. "We fight together, always." She looked into his eyes and felt a surge of courage unlike anything before. He was no longer the boy who had rejected her. He was the man who trusted her, who fought by her side, whose heart she could feel intertwining with her own. Together they rose. With a deep breath, Leora reached within herself, channeling everything she had learned. The threads of fate, the whispers of spirits, the guidance of the moon goddess, they all came together in a brilliant burst of silver light. The threads wrapped around the ancient enemy, binding it, restricting its movement, unraveling its power strand by strand. Kaelin moved with perfect precision, striking at the enemy's exposed weaknesses, his sword guided not only by skill but by the rhythm of their combined efforts. Every swing, every thrust was mirrored by Leora's magic, their bond visible in the dance of steel and silver threads. The enemy let out a final, ear-piercing scream as Leora and Kaelin pushed with everything they had. With a blinding flash, the creature dissolved into nothingness, leaving only faint green smoke that drifted away with the wind. Silence fell over the courtyard. The night air was still, the shadows gone, the first light of dawn spilling across the kingdom. Leora sank to her knees, exhausted, her energy drained to its limit. Kaelin knelt beside her, gently lifting her face to meet his gaze. "You did it," he said softly, awe in his voice. You are incredible. You are incredible too," she said, a tired smile touching her lips. "We did it together." For a long moment they simply stared at each other, the air between them charged with everything left unsaid: regret, longing, admiration, and a bond forged in fire and shadows. Kalen's hand reached for hers again, this time holding it firmly. "I was wrong about you, Leora. About everything. You are not defective. You never were." Leora felt a tear slip down her cheek, a release of all the hurt she had carried since that fateful day of rejection. "I needed to know for myself," she said softly. "I needed to believe in my own strength." He nodded, understanding, and the tension between them shifted, softening into something tender yet powerful. A connection deeper than words, a recognition of the journey they had survived together. The moon goddess appeared then, her light bathing the courtyard in a gentle silver glow. "You have proven yourselves," she said, her voice like wind through chimes. "Not only in strength but in heart. Your bond is true, forged in trust, courage, and sacrifice. Let it guide you into the days to come." Leora and Kalen bowed their heads in gratitude, feeling the goddess's blessing infuse them with calm and purpose. They had survived the darkness, and now the kingdom, too, would breathe free of fear. In the days that followed, the kingdom celebrated, though the tale of the ancient enemy remained a whispered legend. Leora's power became known, but not feared. The people admired her courage, and Kalen stood beside her not as a prince to be worshipped, but as a partner, equal in skill and heart. Even as life returned to its rhythm, the bond between Leora and Kalen deepened. They trained together, explored the mysteries of Leora's abilities, and faced challenges side by side. And though shadows might rise again in the future, they knew they would meet them together.